right. Welcome everybody to today's NSA Academy for November 2014. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to get online and get ready to go, and then we're going to jump right in because today we've got a ton of content for how you can get your ROI for your ROA from our most fantastic and most recent Cavett Award winner, Clarke-Epstein. So give us a few seconds, come on in, we'll be talking a little bit, and we do have the Facebook page for the NSA Academy open. As we're going through today's, that's the area where we want people to interact and talk through it. If you have questions, don't forget to send those, or you can always email me directly, Sarah directly, or Liz. So we'll be providing information and talking more. Do a double check and make sure everything's coming off over here.
And we do have a learning objective in the Facebook group already, too, from Chad Lawson. So that's a good start.
Okay, so it looks like we're all up and operational. Hi, everyone. All right, we'll give it one more minute and get ready to go. Looks like we've got about 10 people, and it looks like Liz has put the Facebook group back into the link. So we're going to go ahead and get started as people come onto it because we want to have as much time as possible today. My name is Lindsay Martin Bilbrey, and I'm the Director of Learning Experiences here at the National NSA headquarters in Tempe. And we are thrilled to have everyone here today, as well as our presenters who are joining us. Each month we spend this time together to not just to have you listen, but to have you interact, because to us it's most important for you to get something that's a real takeaway. As always, we encourage you to take what you learned today and practice it there in your home areas. So if you haven't found a chapter yet, or you are looking for one, do make sure that you connect with us online or call the office here at 480-968-2552 so we can help you find a home base close to home, or as Chris just shared with me, driving a cool 180 miles to get to your local chapter to find your friends, because you can never underestimate the importance of, or overestimate the importance of having that personal connection to practice your skill sets. So I'm going to turn it over to Liz Green, who will be introducing today's presenter and talk a little bit about what we're going to learn today. Liz?
Thanks, Lindsay. This is such a pleasure to be getting to put together these Hangouts once a month for the Academy this year, because really what I'm doing is bringing you the people who were influential when I started. And then we get to connect again and share some great information. Clarke-Epstein, if you haven't had the pleasure yet, make sure you have the opportunity whenever you get to be in person to say hi, because she's one of the most generous and true examples of the Cavett spirit, which, you know, it may be why she received the Cavett Award this year. But she was influential when I started in helping me understand that it's just not about going out and saying, hey, I'm a speaker, I'm really good at what I do, and I'm entertaining on the platform. If we really want to be good at our job, we need to be able to provide something that's meaty, and I can't wait to dive in. And I'm going to stop talking because it's not about me today, it's about Chris. Chris, hello.
Hi, Liz. You made me blush to start things off.
Oh, well, that's always good.
It occurred to me I should have brought Cavett down and put him on my desk so he could. He happens to be up at the top of the stairs. He reminds me every time I go upstairs back home that being at home and being focused on my family is important, and he reminds me when I head downstairs to the office that focusing on the participants in my programs is what's really important. So he occupies that transitional space from work to family in my life, and he's an important mentor for me in both of those places. So this is a great joy to be here and to be with the Academy members. So hi, everybody, and when you think of a question or a comment, please send it in one of the ways that Lindsay said you could, either on the Facebook page or in emails, because I want to know what you want to know, because that will guide our conversation.
Absolutely.
Let
So,
me
go ahead.
just throw in one thing, that if people don't have it around, they might want to see if they can lay their hands out on the 30 things we know about adult learning article that was part of your materials when you signed up for or indicated you were interested in today's Hangout. And you also got a link to the copy of the white paper of how speakers deliver return on attendance. That would be handy to have around. And there was also a link to a sheet of learning objective words, would be helpful for you to have. So this would be a good time to start gathering those resources.
I'm putting those links back in that first article. I need to go find again, but I put the other two into the event that people are watching right now, so they should have that. And I'll go find the other one while you're answering this question, Chris. Are you ready for your first question?
I am ready for a question.
So I know that you often receive this particular pushback when you're talking about adult learning and why speakers should care about it. If I'm a keynote speaker and I do mostly entertainment, I'm not a trainer, why should I care about adult learning principles?
Which is absolutely the foundational question. And I believe that the purpose of all face-to-face meetings is change of some sort. The reason that people hire us as experts, no matter what our expertise is in, whether it's in finding the humor in everyday life, whether it's creating balance in your life, whether it's learning the skill of how to deliver a feedback effectively, or how to make conflict your friend in the workplace, or how to have better communication skills with your significant other, whatever your content is, the reason people hire us is because they want their participants, their attendees, their employees, their members to be more capable at the end of the time together than they were at the beginning of the time. That means the purpose of all conferences, the purpose of all meetings is for a transfer of learning from what the expert in the front of the room knows to the individuals who are sitting in the audience. Now, we all want to do that. Adult learning principles are the things that tell us how we can do it most effectively, what kinds of elements we should put into our presentations in order for that transfer of information and knowledge to actually happen. The other thing that I think is really important for us is most of us as professional speakers really like to be in front of an audience. You know, I'm loving this opportunity, except I have to tell you, part of me is thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we were all in a room together? Because if we were in a room together, I could see what's going on in your life, and I could tell if what I'm saying is making sense or whether you're confused about something. There's a lot of stuff that I get for us being together. But the reality is we don't always have the opportunity to get together, so we need to learn how to apply these learning principles in this kind of an environment too. The thing that scares me the most is we talk about how it's important to have face-to-face interaction, but when we get in front of those audiences in a face-to-face environment, we never do anything that's different than what we would do if we were just talking to them over the telephone. If we don't have them interact in some way, whether our task is a keynote or a breakout session, if you never have some level of reaction human to human, why did we want those human beings in the same room? We can't justify what we're asking for if we don't understand how to embed good adult learning principle practices into our presentations, no matter what it is. So it's when the humorist tells a story from life and pulls out the lesson from that very funny story and says to the audience, Has that ever happened to you? And people are nodding their heads, and then they say something like, you know, turn to the person next to you and tell them the story of when that happened to you the last time. And so there's that little brief interaction between two people that reinforces the message, the lesson that they gave from their example, and let people see it through their own lens of an example that makes a difference. Here's the other piece, and then I'll stop talking for a minute.
Yeah.
There is research out there that says 96% of the CEOs in corporate America want to know how the things that happen at a learning event, and I'm going to use that as the broad term for all the work that we do, whether it's a training session or a keynote, or you are the summarizer at a conference, any of those, I'm using learning event as the generic term for that. So 96% of the CEOs want to know how the elements of the learning event tie to business initiatives. What happens here? How does that further our business objectives? 96% of the people want to know, is the money we're spending on this learning event really moving us in the direction of what we've stated as our business objectives? What percentage, I'm curious, have people type in somehow, what percentage of those CEOs of that 96% do you think actually get that information?
I'm typing that into the Facebook group right now. What percentage of CEOs get from speakers?
Get the people who are planning their events. So the people who are hiring us, in other words.
Of people hiring speakers get the information?
Get information that says what happened at the learning event. I'm sorry, I can't make this a two-sentence question.
That's all right.
What happens at the learning event is tied to business objectives.
All right, let's see what people think. I would guess it's a lot less than the, what did you say the first percentage was?
96% of the CEOs want it.
I would guess it would be a lot less. Anybody else have guesses?
Lindsay, you're a professional in this arena. What percentage do you think?
So you're reporting back from the meeting planners? I'm guessing probably less than 50% are hearing back on it.
Okay.
We would love it to be more, trust me, from the meeting planning chair, but that isn't always necessarily the gift that we get to give.
Anybody responding?
No, we're not having anything come in from the Facebook group or from the Academy group online.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess.
Oh, did you get one?
No, I'm going to guess, though, it would be less than 50%, maybe 30%.
Okay, you guys are so optimistic. The percentage that get what they ask for is 6%.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so I got to tell you, in a time of tightening economy, if only 6% of CEOs are being given information of how what's happening at this learning event fosters and furthers their business objectives, that does not bode well of increased budgets. Number one. All right. So this is the depressing part of our time together.
Absolutely.
Here's another little statistic that you can put in your pipe and smoke. Robert Brinkerhoff, a professor at Michigan State, I think. John Molitor is going to kill me because I don't have the right Michigan college. But Professor Brinkerhoff did a study asking the question, what percentage of people use the information that they get at a learning event? And this is the one that just floors me. So 15% of the people who go to a learning event take what they've learned, try it, and get good results from it. So 15% of the people in your audience will take what you've helped them learn and do something with it. Another 15% won't do anything. They might as well not have attended. So that leaves 70% floating out there. 70% of the people in your audiences will try something that they've learned from you. They will try it. They won't do very well at it, and they'll give up. So that means that 85% of the people sitting in your audience will either do nothing with or will try and give up something that you have so passionately served them and hope that they will use in their own lives. And that happens because we don't pay attention to adult learning principles.
So it's the whole dusty binders concept.
That's exactly it, yeah. I took all these great notes, I had all this good intention, and I didn't actually do anything with what I got, or I tried it and it was too hard, I wasn't successful, or I tried it and my culture rejected it, but for whatever reason, I didn't sustain the effort. And that's a terrible track record. And if that's what's going on, then it's not surprising that only 6% of meeting planners are reporting back to their CEOs because they have nothing to report. And our job is to make sure that what goes on in those sessions that we're in charge of have the elements in it that make it more likely that we can beat those odds that I just talked about. And that's what learning objectives and learning outcomes do for you. They help you, in your mind, think through your presentation from the question of what are people going to do with what we're talking about when they get home.
So it's really about making people understand why they should pay for us.
Yes, yeah, ultimately it is, because what it says on my program descriptions is by the end of this session, participants will be able to, and then I have my learning objectives. And that is my contract, if you will, with the participants and through the meeting planner. Now I'm sort of jumping ahead here a little bit, but it will fit very nicely.
And I love that you say contract, though, Chris, because especially sitting from those who help put the events on, in essence, you're guaranteeing what's going to happen with your participants, and I think that that's something that most speakers don't realize. You know, people really are having an expectation set. So I love that you use those words, contract.
Yes, absolutely, because when an adult, and if you read the article about adult learning, a lot of the beginning things say adult learners choose their learning experiences by relevance to their situation.
Yes.
So when I go to a conference and I look at all of my choices of what to go to, and I look at those learning objectives, those learning outcomes, I'm looking for the ones that do the most for me. It's what's in it for me. Boy, if I can learn this, I'm gonna be better at my job, or I'm gonna be better in this relationship. And if you put that in the program and then you don't cover it in your session, or you don't cover it in a meaningful way, what happens is you're going to have an unhappy participant.
And an unhappy meeting planner.
Exactly. I always suggest that it's, especially if you've written your description and your objectives 6 months before the conference, it's probably a really good idea to reread that description 2 weeks before you go to do the program, because you need to remind yourself what it was that you said you were going to do. The other thing that I wanted to mention about this is that in the sales process, all of us have been in a situation where let's talk about conflict, okay? I'm just going to use it as an example. The meeting planner says we we've had, there's been so much change in our organization, and we're really focusing on teams, and we realize that there's conflict issues that don't get resolved. So here's what we would like you to do. We would like you to help people understand how to identify conflict, what to do with the conflict, what when they identify it, what to do with personality problems in the workplace, and how to deal with unhappy customers who are escalating into a conflict situation. And we'd like you to do that in 30 minutes. Now, here's the deal. The problem is we say yes. We as presenters say yes because we want the job. And we need to be able to say, that's a noble goal. And there is a possibility that we can heighten people's awareness about all the ways that conflict impacts them on a day-to-day basis. But in terms of giving them any skills that they can actually use and be prepared to take in this very difficult topic area that you've chosen, there's no way that you can do that in 30 minutes. So I can do it. I need more time.
Right.
That becomes part of the sales conversation. And if you have a good set of learning objectives, you can present that and say, here are the things that we could cover, and you need to tell me of these things which are the most critical for your group. And then it's a way to start the dialogue that you can start saying, okay, if you want to focus this on conflict with customers, we need to do some role play. That's the only way that that'll actually work. And in order to do that, just with a group of this size, that's going to require at least a 20-minute chunk in and of itself. And so you can start negotiating outcomes versus time, which also ends to paycheck. And quite frankly, some things, if you're talking about awareness kinds of things, that is appropriate for a keynote. If you're talking about skill building, that's more appropriate for a breakout. So then you could say, here's a way we could approach this. I can do a 45-minute keynote that will bring awareness up to a level, and then I would be happy to do a breakout session where we have an hour and a half where we can take that awareness and plug it into certain skill sets and really work on the skill sets. So now you've increased your sales opportunity to do a keynote and a breakout session. And it's been my experience through the years, especially if you're doing it in an association marketplace, when you do the keynote and you do the breakout, you are much more likely to get follow-on business.
Mm-hmm. So let's back up for a second, because I think you've demonstrated why we should care.
Yeah. Okay.
And you demonstrated how this could actually help us speak more, and speak, get that follow-through business, those sort of things. But really, what are the high points of how adults learn that speakers really need to know?
Okay, great. I mentioned one, that adults learn because of relevance to their situation. The second thing is adults learn by doing. They absolutely have to put the whatever it is in practice. So, for example, in my change work, I use a model of the comfort zone, the stretch zone, and the panic zone. And once I explain what those things are, then I will have them pause and say, I want you to think of usually it's leaders, think of the people on your team, and which are the people in your team that are firmly entrenched in their comfort zone, and which are the people in your team that tend to live in their stretch zone, that are pretty comfortable with that, and who, if any, on your team is existing in their panic zone. And I actually have them, with a diagram, put people in those places. And then we talk about, okay, if you have people who are in their stretch zone, they're your change champions. If you have people who are firmly entrenched in their comfort zone, these are the people that you are either going to have to give a hand to gently pull out of their comfort zone, or you're going to have strategies where you literally push them out of their comfort zone into their stretch zone. And if you have somebody who's in the fetal position in their panic zone, you need to tend to those people because they cannot learn or develop while they're in their panic zone. So I literally have people think through the process and then say, all right, what would be a strategy? And maybe we'll have a general discussion, or maybe I'll have them work with a partner. If you have a person in their panic zone, what would be a strategy that you could use to help them, and let them talk with a partner and then bring up some of those ideas. But let the ideas come out of the group itself rather than me telling them what the ideas can be. Because what you're doing is you're putting your content in their context, which is making it real for them. So that's a beginning of it. Now, let's say you're doing a program on feedback, then we need to get to the level of where you actually have people do something. Now, I never use the term role play, because that will just send people into hyperventilating. But I will say, you know what, let's see what happens if you put this in practice. And I use a triad group where we get in groups of 3. One person is the observer. In the case of feedback, one would be the feedback giver, one would be the feedback receiver, and I give them index cards with a little role play dialogue, and they have their conversation, and then we stop, and then I say, okay, observer, give your partnership feedback of what you saw in that conversation. That takes the pressure off. They're not doing it in front of the whole group, and the observer learns. You learn as much when you're the observer as you do when you're the player. And if you do that 3 times, then you do 3 rounds of it, then everybody gets to be an observer once, and everybody gets to be a feedback giver once, and everybody gets to be a feedback receiver. Now, I set up my scenarios based on my interviews with the meeting planner, so it's relevant to their business. If we're doing it with a customer, we can shape it to that. We can do that, but they've now had 3 opportunities, and you can do that in 15 minutes. You can do 3 rounds of 3 in 15 minutes, so it doesn't have to be a long time. But they will, and then have the total discussion about, okay, what did you learn from those interactions, and pull out the learning points from those. Now what you've done is you not only given them content, but you've had them practice it in the context, and then if you really want to put the cherry on the top, then you have the conversation that says, what will stop you in your environment from actually doing that? So then they get to talk about what are their real barriers. And all of that, all of those actions come from the adult learning principles, because I know that it has to be their own stuff, that they have to actually practice it, and you have to recognize that this all sounds really good in theory, but it's hard to do. If it wasn't hard to do, they'd already be doing it, right? And you didn't have to come in and do the program. So recognizing those 3 elements of how adults learn really elevates what you're doing.
Well, and I think that's brilliant, and the work that I do is in wellness, and there's probably no more resistant to change topic than people taking control of their own wellness. And that piece, that last one, about what's standing in your way from making those changes, once I started doing that, that's when I started getting the feedback about, wow, this is what I actually did, as opposed to, you know, just spewing information at people doesn't make a difference. It's when you figure out how you're going to implement it that makes a difference.
What's always interesting to me is the more interactive, the more you let adults come up with their own answers to good questions, the more you will get feedback about how brilliant you are as a presenter. Because, again, you're giving the adult what it is that they want, which is, I want this information, the content, to be in my own context. You will never know more about your subject than some of the people in your audience, because they will always know more about your subject in their own reality than you do. I want to just take this in a slightly different direction, because I don't want my keynoters to be...
I was just about to ask, how do you do this on a big main stage? Because I think this is great for a small classroom training environment, but I would love to hear what that looks like on a big stage.
The first thing that I do is on my logistics sheet, I always ask for round tables. And on my logistics sheet, it says, Stell, who is my marketing director who sends that out, it says, embedded in that, if the room cannot be set up in round tables, please let me know so I can arrange a call with Chris so you can explain to her why that's not possible. Because I know that round tables make people interact. I mean, it just does. Straight lines people do not react in straight lines. And unless you're talking about huge, huge, huge audiences, I mean, we do this at NSA all the time. I mean, you know, our general sessions are set between 1,500 and 2,000 people, and in the ballrooms, we can almost always accommodate round tables for sessions. And the minute you do that, people talk to each other, and people make eye contact with each other. And so if you're up there explaining an idea of something, you're going to have people making eye contact like, is she nuts? You know, we could never do this. And then at the table, you know that people realize they're not the only one having that thought process. So what you need to do is control your environment, because your environment will make it either possible or not possible to have that kind of interaction. It is not hard to say, turn to the person next to you and talk for 3 minutes about the best way you've seen a team focus on a goal in your organization. And remember, let's step back. We know that people come to learning events for 2 reasons. They come because they want to learn something new and they want to interact with other people. So the minute you start doing that, you are creating networking events. I wanted to go just a little in a little different arena. I was thinking, if I was a humorist and I was thinking about writing learning objectives, okay, here's one that I could write. Recognize the stress relieving power of laughter. If I was just doing a straight humor program, I could have a learning outcome. Participants will recognize the stress relieving power of laughter. And in order to accomplish that, at the beginning of my presentation, I would say something to the effect, okay, you know, some of you flew in today, some of you worked and you ran to get here tonight, you know, maybe whatever the situation would be, I would set up what their day was like, and I would say, just out of curiosity of stress level, rate your stress level on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is, I feel like I just got up from a 1-hour massage. 5 is that if there was a bridge, I'd be the one jumping off of it.
Sorry.
Where are you right now? And then turn to the person next to you and share what your number is at your table. Share what your numbers are. Buzz, buzz, buzz. And the minute you do that, people will be laughing and the energy will go up in the room, and then you bring them back. Say, okay, great. I was kind of listening, and it sounds like we had more people that were 3 and under than we had that were or 3 and up than were 3 and under. In fact, I didn't hear about any 1s. Or you could have people, how many said you were 1s? How many said you were 2s? How many were 5s? You know, you can do something like that. So what you've done is you've had them recognize and identify their stress. Now you go through and you give your presentation. People are laughing. Some of them have to cross their legs because they're laughing so hard. You know, all of that is going on, and you are getting close to the end when you're going to do your big finished story. You say, by the way, just out of curiosity, remember at the beginning I asked you to rate your stress level from 1 to 5, and we had, you know, 75% of the people were 4s and 5s. Let me ask you now, how many of you would rate your stress level as a 1, like you just got up from a 1-hour massage? How many would rate it as 2? Look what happened. We now have a shift from 75% were 4s and 5s to now 75% are 1s and 2s. And I just want you to know that this is within your reach every single day if you're paying attention to bringing laughter in. And we've discussed 3 ways you can find laughter: from the people you work with, from the emails that you get, from the newspapers that you read. You know, whatever it is, I can recap. I'm doing a little review which solidifies the messages. And so what I have done is I have now satisfied my learning outcome, that I have given them a visual experience of how laughter can take care of that stress level.
Right. And Chris has helped me develop my keynote is always very short and tight for the, you know, I get 15 to 20 minutes most of the time, but there's still interaction in there. Sometimes I have the interaction for the audience, so I'll do the, but what about this? You know, I'll have the conversation for them, but I always make them practice something. Mm-hmm. So when I give them the strategy about moving more in daily life, I make everybody stand up and do it with me. It doesn't take very long, but it's also a change in energy. People feel like they're involved. And since I speak after they've eaten, and usually a cardiologist has spoken, it's good to get them up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It is, it is so amazing to me to feel the shift in energy that happens when you get adults active in whatever setting you're in. It just, you know, if you do it a couple times and give yourself permission to be scared and get out of your comfort zone, there is it used to be the way they defined people like us is that we were the sage on the stage, which was the person who stood up front and was the expert and, you know, blah, 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 and you were going to vomit your content onto people, and they would then be impressed with how smart you are. And what we really understand now is the sage on the stage model is dead. It is the guide on the side is the real model of a presenter, which is the person who helps people see what kinds of skills they can build and how they can use them, and that makes the difference, and that makes the impact, and that's how we learn, how we earn our money, and how meeting planners get results on their evaluations that say things like, I can't wait to get back and put this stuff in action. I'm walking away with 3 concrete ideas that will allow me to be better at dealing with conflict in my workplace. I can't wait to share this with my colleagues when I get back to my office. And when you give that kind of information, when people have that experience and they write that on their evaluations, meeting planners have something to talk about with their CEOs, the people who are writing the check. And they will tie it back to you in the middle, because that's the experience that you gave people.
Well, I think you have demonstrated very well why these concepts are important and why learning objectives are important. Let's talk a little bit about how to create the learning objectives for our programs. And I did just post another link to the Facebook group in there and invite you, if you're following along at home, to post a draft of a learning objective, and Chris is going to give some feedback and some help on those as we come towards the end of the hour. And I want to say one of the things that learning objectives do for me is that sometimes when you see it in the brochure when you're getting ready to speak and you look and say, oh, I said I would do those 4 things. Well, I better do those 4 things.
Yep. That's that contract element, that when you put it out there, that's really what you're doing. And the other thing is, I want to talk through the process just a little bit, and that is that learning outcomes, to me, learning outcomes happen early in my development process. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to do a program on feedback. I start with my first blank piece of paper with learning outcomes. What if I'm going to do a program on feedback? What is it that I would like participants to feel comfortable with by the end of the program? Now, I'm not going to be able to do all of them, and in the white paper, the NSA white paper, the return how speakers deliver return on attendance, on page 12, there are a series of 5 questions that are very pertinent. The first one is, what should participants know how to do by the end of the program? So if you're doing a program on feedback, if you're doing a program on humor or balance in your life, whatever your topic is, heart-healthy living, whatever your topic is, what should they know how to do by the end of the program? Second question, will participants be motivated to do this new thing by the end of the program? Now, remember what we said? 70% will try it and do badly at it, and then they'll give it up. So motivation comes by feeling secure that I have some skills that I can say I can do that. That's why the practice or some level of activity, getting up and doing a yoga stretch in the session, makes me feel like, oh, well, I don't know that I'm a full-fledged yoga person, but I know how to do one stretch. Maybe I could learn another one.
Uh-oh. She froze.
Chris?
By the end of
Oh, there she is. She's back.
Yep.
You might repeat that last sentence. We lost you there for a sec.
Okay, I'm sorry. Question 3 is, have I provided the information and or tools so that the participants will be able to do this new thing by the end of my program? This is all that blank piece of paper stuff that you're asking before you've even put together a program. 4 is, how will I know that my answers to the first 3 questions are honest? Because the trick is, if you are saying I'm going to do skills, there's going to be a time in every program where you're going to have to make a decision on the fly. Am I going to tell that story, or am I going to have them do this activity?
Mm-hmm.
And because we're speakers, our default is to tell the story, because that's our comfort zone. If I tell the story, boy, they're going to love this. They're going to think I'm a great speaker. That we see that as being different than if I take that same 5 minutes that it would take to tell the story and have them have a conversation with their partner of what's the first thing they're going to put into action as a result of our time together. And that's the moment of truth, because you've got to be honest with your stuff. And then, how will my clients know that my answers to the first 3 questions are honest? Well, trust me, they'll know, because it'll be on the evaluation form. So when you do this kind of work, this is the work that you do as you start, so you have a sense of all the things that you can do with the program. And then you go to your meeting planner and say, what are the issues that are driving you to ask me to put together a program for your particular group of people? And that's when you start matching, what is it that the meeting planner wants and needs, what did the participant want and need, what do you have to offer, and what time do you have to do these things? And you start putting that together, and that starts giving you the framework for the program. Let me breathe. There's one thing that I want to point out on the learning objective words that people have as a handout. These are based on, you're going to really love this, Bloom's taxonomy of needs, of learners' needs. And in your spare time, do a Google search for Bloom's taxonomy and read some of the articles that you get from that, because that really dives into what this is all about. But here's what I want you to look at on this list. You'll see that there are words in bold. So one is knowledge. Put a number 1 next to knowledge. Then comprehension. Put a number 2 next to comprehension. Skip over, and there's a column that says application. Put a 3 next to application. 4 is analysis. 5 is synthesis. And 6 is evaluation. These are levels. So knowledge is the most basic level. This is answering the question, do people know more after the session than they knew before? The second one, comprehension, is do they understand? People, can they reinstate or reinterpret the information in a meaningful way in their own words? Third level is application. Can they apply this to their own world? This is that question of what would get in the way of you being able to do this in your own world. If I can't see how I could apply it in my world, the knowing it doesn't mean anything. I lost my count. 4 is analysis. This is where they have taken the information you've given them and taken it through the filter of, will this work in my world? And is it practical in my world? If you are telling me to spend more time with each individual customer to deal with their issues, and I'm in a call center where my mandate is get people off the phone quickly, that doesn't work in my world. I've done the analysis and you've told me something. All you've done is frustrated me more, and shame on you, speaker, because you haven't learned the world that I live in. 5 is synthesis. Can I evaluate it and see how it fits in my world? And 7 is evaluate, and am I really ready to take it and create something that works for me? So as you look at the words, know that the words, the verbs that you pick, apply to a deeper or a surface or a deeper level of interaction. So that's why you have a resource list and you write these things out, and you'll notice that they go from passive to active. So learn, understand, acknowledge are all pretty passive words and they're a start, but if all of your learning outcomes have passive words, then you're not really taking them down lower in the taxonomy. There's theory behind this that you have to kind of understand, but once you start working with this, you see how it helps you guide your program, putting your program together.
That's really smart. So should we dive into some examples?
Yeah, let's do that.
So we have one here from Chad Lawson, who you know.
Yeah, I know. Hi, Chad.
And you know what? I am going to take and stick the link to join us live into the event. So I'm going to invite Chad and Tina Hallis is there too to jump on and join us. But I'll give you some ideas of what they were mentioning here. Let me see if I can bounce back over here and look. I lost my Facebook group. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Tina, we were going to start with Chad. His audience is divided up, as you may know, into 2, but one of them, he says, team members will take back time for bigger projects by choosing to teach rather than do. And he's talking about IT professionals working with people using IT. So team members will take back time for bigger projects by choosing to teach rather than do.
Can we talk to Chad, or can he talk to us?
We can. I put the link in. Hopefully he'll join us here, and then of course, let me see if I can get him in another way. And then he had one more. Do you want to hear that?
Yeah, go ahead, because I'm making notes here.
The people who use the IT will reduce downtime and increase productivity by taking back some control of their technology.
Okay. I'm gonna make an assumption here so we can go through this. So I'm thinking that with Chad's first one, he has some sort of a process that he teaches or shares with people in order to take back time, that there's some steps or a process of doing it. So what I would say as the learning outcome is I would start with, and again, I always use the beginning phrase, participants will be able to. So start with that. Participants will, and then you can have that as a line. And
there he is. He joined us. Hey, Chad, can you hear us?
Then you can learn the process for bigger projects or something like that. But we need to identify. We need to. Hi, Chad. I see you now. So
I'm having technical difficulties. Please stand by.
I'm assuming you have some sort of process that you're teaching people or you're sharing with people. There's some steps.
There we go. I think I'm finally online.
Okay, cool. I can see you just fine, and I can hear you.
Excellent.
Okay. So
what was your question, please?
You have some sort of a process that people use in order to take back time?
For the objective in question, my premise is that IT professionals, instead of simply stepping in whenever they receive a ticket, fix the problem, and disappear back into the night again, be on teaching their team members how to resolve the problem when it comes up. Time, instead of being that, or what is it, giving a fish, teaching to fish type of thing. The premise is that if they teach, then the next time that same problem comes up, by coming through, I think I got lost.
I'm hearing you. But
okay.
We need to identify.
Rather than needing to, there we go. Okay. Rather than needing to have to resolve the same issues over and over again, focusing on the projects to move the company forward, rather than having to constantly resolve the same issues.
Okay, so a learning outcome, as I'm hearing what you're saying, and we would want to hammer this a little, because we can, the more specific you make these, the more powerful they are, but this would be a practice skills necessary to empower their clients to solve their own problems.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm hesitant. I'm freaking out the word client there, but that's another story. But yes. And
we start with the verb, and the verb implies what you're going to do. So if you say learn skills necessary, that's different than practice skills necessary.
Okay.
Understanding that if you say learn skills necessary, that allows you just to deliver a lecture about the skills necessary. If you say practice the skills necessary, that means something interactive has to happen. So and learn, if you look at the taxonomy, learn comes at a higher level than practice does, because that's surface. It's more surface. And when you get to practice, it means there's skin in the game. And I think that for us as speakers, the more we think about our content from a skin in the game on the side of the participant, and then hold ourselves to that, the more effective we are. Because I can be charming and delightful and talk about the skills necessary to empower an IT professional to help their clients, for lack of another word, solve their own problems. I can do that in a charming and entertaining way, but that probably doesn't say that the IT folks sitting in what you're going to do. So session, then we have a higher degree of transfer of information. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep. Yes, it does.
So when you pick those verbs, pick the verbs very carefully, because you are making a commitment with the word that you choose. Learn and practice are two very different things. Okay?
Okay.
Does that, I mean, we can come back to the other one, but let's, what has Tina got for us, Eliz?
Tina, well, Tina's on the call. She can tell you herself.
Okay. Tina.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? This is fantastic. Thanks so much.
Oh, good. I'm glad it's got some juice in there for you.
Oh, yeah. I realize as I look at my objectives, they're all passive.
It is what we do best, passive learning. You know, and shame on us. And that's why our fees get questioned, quite frankly.
Makes total sense. So, for example, I have understand how we each have our own unique perspective and how that can be a benefit instead of a divider.
Okay, so what happens if you change experience how an individual's unique perspective, and I can't remember, causes you to see the world from in a different way, or something like that.
She makes me nervous every time she does that.
Pardon me?
You keep freezing. I think it's because you have all the snow up there.
That probably is the reason. Okay, so the minute you say experience rather than, what was the word that you used?
Understand.
Understand. Okay, understand is you tell a story and it's an example of one person thought it was this and somebody else thought it was that. That's understanding. If it's experience and you say, have you ever gone to a movie on opening weekend and you thought it was really wonderful and then ran into a friend who thought it was the stupidest movie they had ever seen? And how did that make you feel? Talk to your partner about having something, or you could do it over a restaurant or something like that. The minute we set up something like that and I discuss it with another person, I am now having an experience about the concept that you want me to take. And because I'm experiencing it instead of just hearing about it, I'm going to take it away in a different fashion. You got another one to try to play with?
Sure. Learning how we can use our minds to train our brains to improve our quality of life.
Mm-hmm. So you could say, spend 5 minutes using your brain to discover how it affects the quality of our life. So you've got a 5-minute segment in your program where you actually take them through a process. I will tell you that people love numbers in learning objectives or learning outcomes. It makes your nebulous stuff sound more tangible to a decision maker. So numbers are good in learning objectives.
Learn 5 strategies.
Yeah. Know again that you have to then do it.
We had a good question in the Facebook group from Joshua Snyder, who wants to know what would be a good balance of action, movement, learning experiences through a 45-minute keynote. I think that was a good question.
I think that's a great question. I think that there's the 9-minute rule, that every 9 minutes you should be doing something, whether it's asking a question and pausing and letting people reflect for a minute, or having a good laugh come along, or having them do something with a partner, a couple-minute interaction. But every 9 minutes to break out of the I'm lecturing mode is kind of a good rule of thumb. If you watch dramas and movies and television shows, you will notice that that's what's going on. The younger your audience,
Yes.
the shorter the span, because they're used to that. And understand, another thing that you can do is, use a little technology. You can pause and have people tweet what was the most important thing you've gotten so far in our time together. Have them do tweets, and if you've got somebody who's watching a Twitter feed, you can, who's helping you out, you can have them feed that to you, and then you can comment on that. I know that we're out of time, and I wanna say something, because this is really important to me. There is a body of theoretical knowledge that you have to know about adult learning and learning outcomes and Bloom's taxonomy and all of this stuff that you have to know, because it's part of the craft of being an effective presenter. If you want to beat those odds that 85% of your audience is probably not going to actually use what you're helping them learn, if you want to beat those odds, you have to know this. It underlines the craft. And like any craft, you learn it, you embed it, and then it disappears. It is not something that people see. Nobody's going to write an evaluation that said, this was a program that absolutely cleaved to the 30 best adult learning principles. Or, wow, you could see Bloom's taxonomy shining through all of this. I mean, you're never going to see that. But what you are going to say is, you are going to say, wow, this was a speaker who really understood the real world and helped me. And we got, from one of my webinars, we got a thing that said the webinar finished at 2 o'clock. By 2:30, I was putting the concepts into practice. That's as good as it gets when it comes to evaluation. So we spent this time focusing on what you have to know in order to improve your craft, and as you use it and work with it, it will disappear. And if there's ever anything I can help anybody with, let me know, because I love this stuff.
Well, and thank you, Chris. That was beautiful. And just in case anybody didn't notice, the beautiful come full circle wrapping up, that is the true signature Chris Clarke-Epstein experience.
It's called reviewing without reviewing, which is a great adult learning principle.
It was beautiful. It was a thing of beauty. And let's do what Chris asked us to do, and let's get into action the principles that she shared with us today. I invite you to post your draft learning objectives in the Facebook group. I'll be on there. Mike will be on there. Chris will hop in, I bet, every once in a while. Lois is there all the time. Get some feedback on what you're doing, and that'll be a great way to keep this going.
Cool. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this.
Oh, it was our pleasure. Thank you again today, Chris, for coming and sharing this wealth of knowledge. And I can see that there's already a lot of Facebook conversation going on about it. We'll be posting those resources that Chris referred to again today, as well as sending them out with a follow-up recording. And then, of course, if it's okay with Chris, we'll be putting her email address out there. You can also find her at change101.com to get more information about how she does and work in her own speaking business and where she's at. Thank you again, Liz, for taking the time, and for all of you with the Academy who have joined us at home, in your offices, and on the road. We appreciate you, and we're excited to talk to you at our December Hangout. Have a great Turkey Day. May the best sports team win. We're going to do a plug for TCU because Mike's not here, but oh boy, he's gunning for it. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.